Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our community cafe here in July. We're just going to give it a few more moments for people to continue to log on and get their audio set up before we get started. So again, good morning and welcome to our community cafe for July. This month's topic is minority health awareness, and we have some amazing speakers lined up. We have closed captioning set up, so if you need that, below you can click on the live transcript and you have your closed captioning. If you have any questions, please put those in the chat. We do have some of our folks from the Community Cafe team that are here to help answer any kind of questions. So we want this to be as interactive as possible. So please get involved as much as you can. And just to be respectful of everyone's time, we will get started. So our very first speaker this morning, I will introduce her, Shelby Holland, and I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. Like Mr. Robert said, my name is Shelby Holland. I am the tribal liaison here at Partners. Today, I'm going to be talking a little bit about Native American health disparities. I am Native American. I'm from the Lumbee tribe here in North Carolina. We're on the East Coast, out of Lumberton, if anyone's familiar with that. The biggest city closest to it is Fayetteville. I have a clinical background. I'm an LCSW, so I have the culture side and the clinical side. So super excited about this stuff. I try to go as quickly as I can through it, but I am passionate. Any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, or we can wait till the end. I do have my contact information at the very end if you have follow-up questions or concerns. We'll go ahead and get started. So I want to get you guys' attention to the top right. It says prevalence of adult mental illness by race. So if we're going right to left, left to right, sorry, the Hispanic adults, you'll see they're at 16.3%. We have white adults at 19.3%. We have Black adults at 18.6%, Asian adults at 13.9%, and then we have Native American, American Indian and Alaskan Native at 28.3%. So looking at those numbers, you can see Native Americans are about 9% higher than the second highest. So you got to think, why is it that we lead in mental health illnesses? So the first point I want to go to is intergenerational and intrauterine trauma. Intrauterine trauma is going to be when in the womb, how if mom experiences trauma, how that translates to intrauterine. So kind of going down to the third bullet point, you'll see higher abuse rates. So for example, let's say mom is being abused, either mentally, physically, sexually, whatever it is, that baby is going to feel every bit of abuse, stress, etc. So because we are abused at such a high rate, it's very likely that trauma starts in utero. It's not even, we aren't even born yet, and we're already feeling that traumatic feeling. And then once you're born, you get into the intergenerational trauma. And what that looks like is, we'll kind of just stay on the topic of abuse. You can experience abuse yourself, whether it be physical, mental, sexual, emotional, or you can see that happening to a parent or a loved one. And unfortunately, the culture, we keep things very hush hush. So we don't typically seek mental health assistance or therapy or anything like that. So typically it's stayed within the culture. And then lack of support and resources. So on top of maybe even wanting to talk to a therapist, if that's something someone wants to do, we don't have high volume in Native American therapists. And when you go to someone who maybe doesn't look like you, they might not completely understand the culture and might not understand why Native Americans do what we do. So there's that. And then also with lack of resources, the Lumbee tribe, my tribe, is considered a food desert right now. We don't have many resources. We don't have access to food. There is not a lot of food pantries. There's no public transportation, so there's no way to really even get help if you wanted it. So just things like that. Not a lot of resources, not a lot of support. So I think that all plays a part into the percentage of mental health for Native Americans. And because mental health illness is so high, we'll go to our next slide. I know it's kind of blurry, sorry. Suicide rates. So I'm going to let you guys look at this chart for a second. Yellow is going to be Native American, blue is going to be white. That pink purplish is going to be black. Asian is that light blue, and Hispanic is the burgundy. So the first thing I noticed with this chart is ages 15 to 35, 40 are very highly influenced, or whatever, my brain is not working, but very much so affected, there we go, affected by suicide. And then you can see around age 45, there's a dramatic dip. And the reason there is a dip right there, we're going to go over why rates are so high, but because I want to go over also why they dip so far down. Typically with Native American culture, the elders are very highly respected. They are held above most people in our culture. So you can see maybe why those rates would go down, because you're feeling respected, loved, cherished. You have high honor, things like that. So when you have those things and support and feelings, it's very common that you might feel purpose or loved and things like that. So let's go over why the rates are so high. I know we just talked about mental health illnesses, so that's a big contributor. Lack of identity. A lot of times Native Americans are not identified as Native Americans. It's very hard to look at someone and say, oh, she or he is Native American. A lot of times we get confused for white, black, Hispanic, or even people from India. So it's who am I? Where do I fit in? I don't feel like anyone really gets me. Nobody knows my culture. Discouraged advancement. I will say that when you're born on sovereign land, it is very looked down upon if you leave that land, because it's like, do you feel like you're better than me? Do you feel like you can go off and advance? You think you're better than the tribe? So it's kind of looked down upon to leave. And when you do leave, and you might be looking for like a bigger city to have better employment, or make more money, or even just branch out to get to know other people and cultures. It's very much so looked down upon. Like once you leave, well, don't come back. Cultural reasons, as I was telling you guys, everything's kind of hush hush with our culture. So if I am 15, 16, 17 years old and Uncle John does something to me, well, mom is going to kind of sweep that under the rug, because that's your uncle, and we don't want anyone to know, because that's going to tarnish our family's reputation and name. Family reputations are one of the most important things when it comes to tribes, because that's the way we identify ourselves. So if you introduce yourself as Native American in my tribe, normally the next question you're going to get is, well, who are your people? So if I say, my people are the Smiths, from that point on, they're going to know almost everything about you without even talking to you, because your name is going to carry either very bad representation or very high representation. So a lot of times when something bad happens in your family, it's not going to be shared. And a lot of times when you don't address those issues, a lot of times it does lead to suicide. So that's mental health. Next one I want to get into is physical health. So on the left-hand side, that first column, you're going to see some causes of death. In the middle column, you're going to see American Indian and Alaskan Natives. And on the right side, the right column, you're going to see all races. I want you guys to kind of look at this, look over it a little bit and tell me, I can't see the chat because I'm whatever, but look over it and tell me what category did Native Americans not lead in. Out. So I can see the chat. Okay, I can't see the chat. I tried. But also,
I'm
go ahead.
sorry, Shelby.
Yes.
Okay, so Mary Beth Young and Ann Gluff
Thank you.
just now put in the chat Alzheimer's.
Yes, that is correct.
Mhm.
Which is funny because a lot of, like I was telling you guys, older people in my culture are very highly appreciated. They are a different type of honor. So it makes me think, maybe it's something they don't report because it might bring shame to them or they might be embarrassed, and maybe it's just not reported as highly as other races. And also oftentimes our elders will go mute because they have earned that right to no longer have to speak. So if they are mute, maybe we also don't know that they're experiencing Alzheimer's. One thing I do want to point out is the fourth one down, diabetes. You can see the big difference in that. So we have a lot of education that needs to be done around eating habits. And then right below it, you can see alcohol-induced deaths. That's a big difference. And then we're going to jump down to chronic liver disease, which kind of wraps into alcohol-induced mortalities. You can see that is a huge number as well. And then almost down at the very bottom, you see assault. When I was talking to you guys about abuse rates, you can see we are over double what the normal, not normal, what other races are. So when working with Native Americans, if anyone ever comes in contact with a Native American, you want to be very aware that we lead in almost all of these causes of death, and we double, triple sometimes in certain categories. Okay. These are gonna be my biggest takeaways, but first of all, I want to go to this little cycle thing you see in the middle. So this is kind of the cycle that Native Americans experience. So there's some sort of trauma, whether it's intrauterine, intergenerational, or even as an adult, you experience some sort of trauma. That's going to lead to mental health illnesses because the trauma goes unaddressed. And once you have those mental health illnesses, a lot of times we self-medicate, which leads to substance use. And a lot of times when you're under any type of influence, you're not making the best decisions or being in the best environments. So most likely another trauma is going to occur. So it's just this big cycle. That trauma occurs, there's another mental health issue. We lean on substances again, another trauma happens. So it's just one big circle. So how do we stop that circle? And I think it's in between trauma and mental health. Something has to happen between that. And for me, it would be implementing resources, more specifically Native American therapists in the communities to get rid of that stigma that a lot of Native Americans have with mental health. And I know here lately it's becoming a lot more accepted and nowadays, but that's not the case with Native Americans all the time. We are a very closed off community. So I think that's one of the changes that needs to happen. And I'm hoping partners will be able to assist me with that. One of the takeaways from mental health and substance use, just keep in mind that we lead in mental health and substance use diagnoses. We are 3.5% more likely to commit suicide. We are 7 times more likely to have alcoholism. On the physical health side, we are 3 times more likely to have diabetes, and we're over 3 times more likely to have chronic liver diseases, and we're 2 times more likely to be killed by our partner. So that partner can be an ex, a boyfriend, girlfriend, a husband, wife, anything like that, we are 2 times more likely to be killed by intimate partners. And that is it. Here's my contact information if anybody wants to follow up with me with questions that I'm not able to answer either today or at the end.
Thank you, Shelby. Does anyone have any questions for Shelby or comments?
Hey, Shelby, I do have a question. I was wondering if you could like briefly mention like what are some of partner strategies to have some interventions in some of these things and improve some of these outcomes.
Thanks, Katie. That's a good question. So right now we have created a tribal engagement strategy, which includes how we're going to get into the community. Like I said several times, we're very close knit. So how do we get into the communities? And partners strategy was to hire someone who looks like tribal members. So that's where I come in. And we've been working really closely with Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians. And obviously we have Lumbee and the other 6 state tribes. We're working with having representation through those tribes. We're going to bring them all to the table and we're going to say, you know, what's going on with your tribes, because every tribe is going to be different. What are you experiencing in your area? What can partners do to help? Because we have the resources and the ability to implement some of those programs. So what can we do to help?
Shelby, my question will be, because the language is the same in English, and as you said, physically looks like or American or white or Hispanic or another. So how the social worker or somebody who's working with the Indian culture has going to realize that this person needs cultural help when this person says, I'm not Indian. So do you want to encourage family to say, when you go to the social worker, say, I am Indian or native culture? So how anybody's going to get information from them to help in the culture?
Good question. So we have our access team and member engagement team. Whenever they're touching base, we do have call scripts that are able to ask, are you a part of a federally recognized or state tribe in North Carolina? And if they are, we are providing training to those departments so that they can know how to further ask appropriate questions and refer them to appropriate people who are able to help, aka me, are able to help with more in-depth issues. Also, I will mention a lot of Native American cultures are trilingual. They speak English, Spanish, and their their tribal language.
Thank you. Shelby, could you put your email in the chat in case anyone thinks of any questions or comments and they need to contact you after the cafe?
Absolutely.
Thank you. And again, if you have any other comments or questions, please put those in the chat. We will get those to Shelby. We are going to move on to our next speaker, Kanisha Bethay.
Thank you, Robert. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. As Robert said, my name is Kanisha Bethay, and I am by title, a research program leader at Duke with the Duke Clinical Translational Science Institute. My background is in public health. And so prior to coming to Duke, I worked for state government, county government, and then also within the nonprofit sector with the Susan G. Komen initiative as well. And so today I'm going to continue the conversation about disparities. I do want to just say that my presentation, I don't have a lot of the statistical data. I just wanted to talk about disparities overall and then share a strategy or a way that we are addressing health disparities in the work that I do at Duke and in the communities at large. So let me. All right, hopefully everyone can see the slide. So I'll just get started, and please feel free to put something in the chat if you want to respond or have a question. I'm totally open to that. I welcome any responses and comments during my presentation. And so here, this slide here that I've titled Community Diversity and Disparities just shows what Americans look like. And so America is made up of a diverse group of people, backgrounds, ethnicities, races, abilities. And so our country is beautiful in terms of the diversity that encompasses our country. However, with the diversity within communities, because all of these people are part of various communities, diversity, age, gender, race, ethnicity, abilities, we are still all impacted in different ways by disparities. And whether that impacts us from our income, our abilities or access to care, everyone at some point is impacted by disparities. And so what are health disparities? That term is used a lot, so I always like to just put everything in context so everyone is coming from the same foundation. But there are significant differences in disease, incidence, prevalence, morbidity, mortality, and survival across populations. Disparities speak to the inequalities and the inequities that occur with regards to access, use, and provision of healthcare information and services across, again, racial, ethnic, gender, socioeconomic, and other groups. And so with that in particular, and speaking to this conversation with regards to disparities, people of color, and particularly African Americans, tend to have worse health outcomes compared to the general population. And we just saw a wonderful presentation from Shelby as she was clearly outlining the disparities with regards to Native Americans and the general population. With that, African Americans tend to have or favor worse off when it comes to cardiovascular disease, hypertension, blood pressure, diabetes, cancer, in particular prostate and breast, and kidney disease. And most recently, the COVID pandemic really highlighted the inequities and disparities across our communities, and how those disparities can lead to worse outcomes when it comes to things such as the COVID-19 pandemic that we just experienced. And so what drives health disparities? And I'm sure this is not new to any of you all on this call, but definitely our social determinants of health, and that be our physical environments, where we live, and that literally includes your home, whether you have an older home that has lead or mold issues, or infestations from rats or other animals that can cause things like asthma and other things to occur. Education, access to healthy child development, which could again go back to physical environments. Our health services or access to health services in your area, your personal practices and coping skills. A large number of people within the Black and African American community lean on their faith and church as a way of coping. Mental health is something that is a stigma in the community, but I will say more and more people are talking about the need for mental health services and the importance of mental health services, and how that can be coupled with their own practices, such as their faith and spirituality. Income and social status, and then of course social support networks, all impact our health and drive health disparities. And so just some other influences, just to continue on that continuum. 40% of factors that influence health come from the social economic piece. And we know that although socioeconomic status is a huge driver of health disparities and inequalities, we do know that it's definitely not just related to this. For instance, maternal child health and death within Black women, regardless of their income, their education, or where they live. Black women are still dying from, what women do every day, give birth at higher rates than any other group. So health behaviors also, definitely, if you participate in smoking or drinking excessively, not being able to exercise adequately, and or access to healthy foods could impact your diet if you live in food deserts, or things of that nature. Clinical care, access to care, as I spoke about earlier, also, and then of course the physical environment, the air and water quality, housing, and transportation access. So with that, chronic disease impacts underserved populations, as we all know, at significantly higher rates. And so I'm sure many of you have seen this image or images like this when speaking about disparities. So we know that equality is not the answer to addressing health disparities, because equality does not equal equity. And then when we do bring in equity to leverage the playing field for everybody so that everyone has the same access, we find that even within that can still cause feelings of inadequacy, and others feeling like maybe they are more so than others. So where we really want to achieve is just justice, where we remove all barriers, and so that everyone, regardless of where they stand, will have access to the same things. And so once the systematic barriers are removed or improved, I believe that's where we will see significant changes in our health disparities across the board. So by one way that we can definitely look at addressing health disparities is through research. Diversity in research is something that you do not hear talked about a lot. Historically, women and people of color have not been included in biomedical research as often as white men. So basically, most of our medications and how we go about practicing health is based on the white male's makeup. Studies have found African Americans represent 12%, but only 5% clinical trial participants. Latinos and Hispanics make up 16%, but only 1% of clinical trial participants. We all know that heart disease is the #1 killer of women in the US, but when there was a huge heart disease trial that took place, only 33% of those participants were female. And even when talking about heart disease and cardiovascular disease, the images you often see more times than not are of men experiencing these diseases. So in addition to there being a lack of diversity in research from participants themselves, there's lack of diversity from the workforce, which then of course can impact access and how one is treated once they do cross into the threshold of services. And so just quickly, I have had the privilege for the last 5 years to work with a group of AME Zion clergy across the state of North Carolina. There's 17 clergy representing 16 churches. And these clergy have been trained in the ways of research. And so in research, equities, racial justice, social justice, although coming from the AME Zion Church, which was born out of social justice, that is something that was definitely a connection to them in terms of our partnership and our abilities to work together to address health disparities from the lens of research. And so with that, our clergy over the past 5 years have spoken to researchers, about 50 researchers within Duke, Wake Forest, UNC, North Carolina Central, and North Carolina A&T about their different protocols, how to better engage with underrepresented communities in research, particularly African Americans. They've educated researchers on how to address the issue of misuse and conduct when it comes to research, the unethical practices that have taken place in the past, and what are now in place to prevent those unethical practices from happening again. And so with that, I have 3 different studies here that the clergy have and are participating in. One is the Care and Justice kidney disease study. Kidney disease by far is more prevalent in African Americans than any other group. However, kidney disease research does hardly ever includes African Americans, although they are the group by far that is that bears the worst outcomes related to kidney disease. And so with that, they have partnered with a researcher, Dr. Opiama Olabisi, who has received the NIH grant for the next 5 years to go across the state of North Carolina and our neighboring states to, 1, bring awareness about kidney disease in the Black communities, 2, offer free kidney health screenings, and then 3, offer the opportunity for African Americans to participate in a kidney disease study that is focused particularly on Blacks and African Americans. Also, another study that they're actively in is called Equal Space. And Equal Space stands for Spiritual and Faith-Based Advanced Care Planning and Palliative Care Education. So there's also a huge disparity, not only within access to care, but then end of life care as well, and how that impacts African Americans, because oftentimes they don't have any type of end of life care planning in place, which by and large reduces or impacts the type of care that one receives towards end of life. And so with that, they are developing a curriculum that will be implemented throughout the churches, piloted throughout the churches, with the goal of being able to share this curriculum across the country for all groups to be able to modify it based on their particular cultures. And then the last but not least, Hope Onslow Jones. This was an initiative or a research study that was born out of the COVID pandemic. And so they were able to bring in community health workers, canvass those communities in the eastern part of North Carolina where the COVID numbers were by far the worst, and bring those people to access to not only testing and screening, but other comorbidities that impacted them while they may have been infected with COVID. And so then last but not least, I just like to end that of all forms of inequality, injustice in healthcare is the most shocking and the most inhumane. And I have a lot of other examples that I could show in terms of how groups like the Annie Zion Hill Partnership are working to address health disparities from the lens of engaging and participating in research. Thank you all. Have any questions?
I have a question. Why is it, because I also mentioned nutrition, what is your opinion, or if you know the answer, I'm not sure, why do you think people of color have such issues with nutrition?
With nutrition, what do you mean by in terms of access to healthy foods?
No, but like how we lead in all diseases that are affected by food, how we make poor choices on what foods we choose to eat, how there's lack of education as far as what you need to eat if you have diabetes. I know you mentioned heart diseases that African Americans lead in. I'm just wondering, what do you think is the missing piece with nutrition and people of color?
I think for the most part, though, I think it still goes back to access. Because if you go into communities that have of lower socioeconomic statuses, their grocery stores and what their produce and food looks like is totally different than going to a grocery store in an area that is more affluent. The produce is fresher. Everything just looks, the store is brighter, the floors are cleaner. Everything is it just looks better and more appealing. Also, I think that there has been a lot of research and practice that has gone into helping different cultures modify some of their recipes or the way that they cook foods or prepare foods that may be more appropriate for them and their lifestyle, but how they can modify them so that they're more healthy. But then I also think that in addition, when you also stratify for nutrition, physical activity, and things of that nature, some people, just because of their genetic makeup are still going to have worse outcomes when it comes to diabetes or cardiovascular disease, even when they eat right and exercise. And so I think that then goes back to, again, the types of medications and treatments that we are using and prescribing, and keeping in mind that most of those have been based on white males, and has not really been inclusive of the diversity of the different cultures and racial and ethnic groups that we have in our country. I know I kind of went on a long tangent with that.
No, you answered it perfectly. It kind of sounds like even from access to treatment, it's just one big snowball. So thank you.
In the chat, we've got some comments. I also saw some people shaking their head in agreement when you were talking about the condition of some of the stores, Miss Bethea, about, you know, maybe the food isn't the freshest. So Jeannie said that there's some research also that indicates the stress hormone cortisol causes us to crave fats and sweets. And so some of the environments or whatever that you were talking about when you were talking about the social determinants of health, or some of those other things that cause stress, you know, and with the food intake. And then food deserts, Alicia was saying, especially in connection with the fresh fruits and veggies, cost the worst. Foods that are available and affordable play a huge role, right? Shanta totally agrees. And you also, you had some comments about some experimentations in the past that have been done on African Americans, and the willingness to participate in research today. Somebody's interested in more of the communities for deaf and hard of hearing. Katie gave out some good information on where to get some statistics on the leading causes of mortality for different, for men, women, Black, white. So, very good information.
Thank you all.
Yes, thank you, Kanisha. I would also ask if you could put your email and contact information in the chat. That way folks can get a hold of you in case they have any other comments or questions, because it does seem like there's some interest in getting some more data. So again, thank you for your presentation. At this time, we will turn it over to our last presenter of the morning, Ms. Mariela Maldonado.
Thank you so much. Thank you for Ms. Robbins, that I was delighted to meet today, and also to talk to her before and know about this community cafe that would like also to share with the bilingual professionals. I already sent them to the list of our professionals who are working with us in with different ways. And I'm so glad I have the opportunity to talk today about my culture. I'm Hispanic as well. So my name is Mariela Maldonado. I'm original from Peru. I live in the United States a little bit more than 27 years, because my child who has autism in another condition was born with a neurological syndrome, and at this time was the best option for us to come to United States, provide getting surgery, and then we stay about that because we realized he has so many things, and then our life changed completely 20 years ago. So, and then after working in different organizations as a outreach coordinators, as a worker, different things, when I started to live here in North Carolina, I realized about the Autism Society of North Carolina, and I was so excited. 15 years ago, I was hired as a bilingual parent advocate, and then now I'm the Hispanic Affairs Liaison for this organization. Very, very excited to talk about my culture today, and also to share about how the culture is influenced so much about the decisions for treatment, diagnosis, and everything. Thank you. Next slide, please. Okay, just there is something that I have in my picture. They said turn on. I don't know what I need to do. I don't know if you see this one, but I can see only part of my presentation. So sorry about that. Is this okay? Much better. Thank you so much. So, Hispanic culture, understanding the diagnosis and treatment of autism. So we have some goals for this presentation. We would like that this presentation will talk about the influences of families, faith, religions, linguistic, and technology, and also barriers. We want to try educate professionals and the community today about how the culture influences parents in diagnosis and making decisions about the treatment. We're going to try to build strategies to better help and work with the families with a culture different from our own, and understanding how to bridge a cultural difference and build trust to families and clients. Next, please. Next slide, please. Or I can move, I don't know. Well, we're going to talk about a little bit about, maybe you hear about the names Hispanic and Latino. We're going to understand a little bit the concept of that. So Hispanic and Latino defines a person who lives in the United States, speaks Spanish, and came from Spanish-speaking country with influences of Spain, regardless of the race. So to make sure we're going to understand that Hispanic is not a race, it's a culture. And you can see in your right hand, you can see in colors, the maps, in this map of Latino or Hispanic countries, like for example, my country, which is in South Carolina, which is in South America, I'm sorry. And we have Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, Venezuela, El Salvador, Cuba, Mexico, and everything. So, but also I'm going to explain you that Latino also is a person who lives in any Spanish-speaking country without necessarily living in the United States. So, for example, when I used to live in my country, I was Latina. I said, oh, I'm Latina because my country belonged to the Latin American countries, the influence from Spanish. But now, because I live in the United States, I define myself with Hispanic. But right now, with all the changes, everything, Latino and Hispanic are used as a synonymous in the United States, okay? But also, I need to tell you that people are more likely to identify themselves of their country of origin. So when I'm going to introduce somebody, I'm not going to say, I'm Hispanic. I'm going to say, I am Peruvian, or Mexican, or Colombian, or maybe Puerto Rican, like that. So I want to hear most of the Hispanic refer themselves or the country of origin. In census in 2020, I don't have the census exactly what happened right now, but I wish I can do. But in census 2020, it says that in United States, more than 18% is the Hispanic populations. And here in North Carolina, at this time, we have 1.1 million people Hispanic in North Carolina. I guess there is more right now, of course. Next slide, please. Okay, so we're going to say also very important thing. Some characteristics that we're going to mention today do not apply for all Hispanic families equally, because there are some misunderstandings about this speaking Spanish that leads to interpret that Hispanic families have the same beliefs and ways of living. Each family has a Hispanic influences according to the dynamic of the lifestyle, how long they live in the United States, how is the education, what is the economic situations, the age, and everything. To give an example, for example, I was raised and grew up more than half of my life in my country. But my children who came here in the United States very young, they have different influences because they grow up here in the United States, they went to the school, they went to the college, everything. So probably the influences about the Hispanic culture is going to be a different of my influence that was raised for my parents in my country. Next slide, please. Okay, we're going to talk about the family. As we say, family is the core of Hispanic families. Hispanic identifies strongly with the nuclear and also to the extent families with feelings and loyalty. And also, we're going to talk about machismo that happens in the whole culture. Let's go to talk about the Hispanic culture. The husband may not accept the diagnosis or the training about the autism, he never participate in any training, but I say, no, like that. Let's see, give an example. And also elder families members run families by tradition. and they may not have knowledge about autism. So what happened? We have a family who said, okay, right now, I don't know if I'm going to get this training, or I'm going to bring my child for evaluation because I need to talk to my husband, or I need to talk to my older brother who leads my family, or I need to talk to my grandfather, or I need to talk to my mom who's in my country because I need to wait to take, it's okay for me. So we suggest as a professional to listen to them, because this is part of the culture, instead to say, no, you are the lead, you're supposed to make the decision. We can listen to them and provide all the resources that this mom needs to know about autism, treatment, and everything. And also we can encourage them to invite this member of the family, the husband, and also to the leader of the family, older brother, godmother, everybody who's important for them to participate at the next meeting that they're going to talk about training, they're going to talk about school educations and everything. Next slide, please. Linguistic. So family may perceive disrespect when professionals address them by their first name. I'm going to explain a little bit. So in the Hispanic culture, the informal way to talk is for friends and families. And the formal way is professional set. Let's go to say, I'm going to talk to, if I'm going to helping a mom, I'm going to say, Mrs. Rodriguez, here is the information that you're looking for, instead of saying, for example, oh, Maria, here is the information that you're looking for. Oh, Mr. Gonzalez, thank you so much to call me back, like that, instead to say, oh, Jose, thank you for calling me back, because this is the way that I can talk to my friend, to family members like that. So it's very important you know about that. And you can make the decision whatever you want to say. You can continue to tell them for the first name, or you can use the Mr. or Mr., whatever you think is much better. We suggest to use in some way to follow the culture in order to have a good relationship with them. Also, we're going to say something important. Having accent to talk in English does not necessarily mean language barriers or immigration status or law education. So we're going to help a family, we're going to respect them, and we're going to request, how can I help you, instead to give all the resources. If somebody came to our office and they have accents, it's better to ask, do you need interpreter? Instead, immediately call the interpreter. Maybe this person believes they have good English and they don't need something like that. So it's important to check with them what they need, how we can help them. Also, most of Hispanic have 2 first names and 2 last names. For example, in my case, my name is Mariela Luz Maldonado Ramon. So I have 2 names, Mariela Luz, and I have 2 last names, Maldonado from my father and Ramon from my mother. So you are going to see frequently all the names. In some cases, they have 3 names or 4 names, Maria de la Rosa Guadalupe. Let's see, to say this is the first name. Okay, some names and last name also are difficult to pronounce in English or in Spanish, and they have cultural meaning. So for example, somebody say, oh, my name is like, for example, let's go to say Lucia Chavez. It's better to say, oh, I love so much your name, sounds like a music. Oh, I remember your name, remember my neighbor's name, something like that. So we suggest to don't make any comment about the names or last name, because sometimes these names maybe remind them maybe something important in their life or generation. So avoid to make a comment about the names will be so good for that. Next slide, please. Okay, we're going to talk about religion, faith, and cultural beliefs. So religion strongly influences the Hispanic culture and is part of the integration in the community. Right? So the same situation. So maybe you are working with a family who really religion is very strong in the family. They say, I cannot make my decisions if my child is going to be evaluated or is going to go to the school, something like that. First, I need to talk to the priest, or I need to talk to my church, or I need help because I'm not sure about that. So we're going to say, we're going to listen them and also provide resources for them, and also encourage for the next meeting. If this is possible, the family is going to bring at the next appointment somebody of the church or the priest or somebody who represent, and this family is very comfortable to get information with somebody like that. So sometimes also some difficult behaviors of children with autism prevent parents to participate in religious rituals, celebrations that causing isolation. So it happens so many times. So parents say, I don't go to my church because my son is jumping, running, crying, everything. And I see that everybody sees me like I'm the guilty or something like that. So we can listen to them and also provide resources that maybe she can bring to the church or she can bring to the community, say, this is autism. And also, by the way, Autism Society provide trainings for members of the church, members of the faith community to provide information about how to work with Hispanic families. Oh, I'm sorry, how to work with children, or the parents with children with autism and another condition. So it will be great that also they can get share this information with the churches and we can work with them as well. So religions also may influence diagnosis of you as a divine punishment or proof of faith. We can see that, oh, I know it's going to happen. I know my child is going to have autism because really I have so many sins, or because I never go to the church, or because I have these situations like that. And so we don't have the authority to tell them this is not true, God is not punish you, it's not punishing you, something like that. So it's more important that maybe we suggest that we can listen to them and also continue to work with them and provide resources that this family can learn more about what is happening, what the situation, what the resources, and how really is autism like that. And also we see so many families believe that autism is caused by courses and really they can cure autism with spiritual cleaning and training and ingestions and something like that. This is something cultural. That is also the game. We are not authority to say, don't bring your child to the cleaning person, like we said, somebody who really is limpiador, or don't bring your child to the it's called el masajero, who's going to provide massage to help. So this is something cultural. If they would like to do, they can continue to do. So we can help them. We can listen to them. We can encourage them to continue to learn by themselves about all the options that they have in the community for the treatment. Next slide, please. So some families react with fear, with depressions, and anger over the diagnosis of autism that may lead to isolations, denying treatment and services. I believe this information that I just shared with you happens in the whole cultures. Okay, because sometimes we're not prepared to say your child has autism, your child has another diagnosis, because in some way there's something, maybe they don't have any experience like that. So these kind of things is happening. So we are encourage professionals to understand about that. If somebody is not coming back, maybe we're working with somebody in this family never call us back, or maybe we can provide all the resources, to give all the phone numbers, and then this mom never call back or never call the resources, maybe something because they're in the process to understanding what happened with the child. So we encourage professionals to be patient, understanding this is a big thing that happens, right? So in most families, maybe they can go quickly and make the calls, the resources that you give to them, participate in the webinars and everything. But for other families, it's going to take time because, as we said, also the reaction will be fear, depressions, and anger, everything like that. So we can work on that. And also we always encourage professionals to provide resources for mental health, for maybe respite programs, everything that can help the family to deal with the process of that. Next slide, please. So how we are overcoming barriers. So in language. Let's go to translate programs information into Spanish and provide opportunities to contact providers in Spanish. So we can provide translations, webinars, resources, everything as much as possible in Spanish so they can have access, because maybe we said, we have an interpreter, we can translate, but maybe we don't have nothing in writing in Spanish. So we can work together that all the resources and all the information that we would like to share with the client, with the family, is going to be also in Spanish as well. What about lack of trust is in the system? Let's go to hire bilingual staff or volunteers or an interpreters. And also maybe we can hire it, or we can also give opportunities for interns, bilingual interns, that they can also help us to reach families or provide services in Spanish. And also, if we have any information, we provide information in Spanish, let's go to have in the website, in the flyer site, something that says, se habla español, that means we speak Spanish. So this is the thing that maybe we can help us to share with the families that we're providing services. We have so many calls for families that they say, I couldn't call with this agency, everything, because the person answered phone in English, and I don't know if I'm going to leave the message. But though I know these organizations or this company or this provider, they have a bilingual. So in this organization provides really Spanish. So it will be great to say, okay, everything in English said, for Spanish, please leave your message in Spanish. So it will be great. So in this way, the families or the clients or the person who needs help is going to trust, oh, I can leave the message in Spanish because somebody's going to call me. Either nobody says hello, hola, ¿cómo está usted? Or how something in Spanish, but saying something, informing the families about that we're providing information in Spanish will be great for that. Okay. And about cultural understanding, we encourage the providers, everybody who can work with Latino families, increase all the staff's knowledge of Hispanic culture with diversity and inclusion training like today. Today is fantastic. Oh my God. Today I learned so much about you, about both presentations, and I'm glad about that. And this is kind of thing that we're looking for: providers, organizations, private companies, that they really provide training their staff about the cultural in Hispanic culture or any other culture. I'm talking about my Hispanic culture, but any culture or any diversity or inclusion that's going to help us to understand and help much better every human being. Next slide, please. So I'm going to say thank you. In Spanish, we say vaya con Dios. It does mean God can help you, or something like that. It's something religious, but we can say something like that. It's not necessarily you can say this way in Spanish, but this is the way that we can address the family to say goodbye. This is my name, Mayela Maldonado. This is my title, Hispanic Affairs Liaisons, and this is my email address and my contact information. Also, we have a link in Spanish, Autism Resources, is Autism Society in North Carolina Resources in Spanish. This link, they have plenty information about the agenda for all the webinars in Spanish for the whole year in locations. We have Hispanic support groups in Spanish. We have the dates of the meetings. Right now we have meetings by video chat, but also we have events in Spanish in the community. Like, for example, now in August and September, we're going to have Hispanic picnics that you're welcome to participate as well. I want to share with Mrs. Robbins about all the dates you would like to go will be great. And also we have videos in Spanish about teaching families how to work with the visual pictures, how to work and deal the behaviors, how to understand the agenda for one day, everything in Spanish. We have like 4 or 5 videos in Spanish. Also, we have social narratives about teaching how to read stories that is going to help the child to understand things, change, and everything. So we're so happy that to share with all the participants today about our resources in Spanish, and you can, it's in English and Spanish. So the title is in English, but whole information is in Spanish. And then you can see our t-shirts. We have, before the pandemic, we were able to order t-shirts in Spanish. As you said, it says autismo, independiente, creativo, lógico, único. It's in like a hard way. We have a different kind of expressions in Spanish about what is autism or how does mean autism, I mean. So we encourage, you are interested to walk in the street with our t-shirt will be great. Also, we are providing this t-shirt for families, and also because this is the way that we can see autism is part of the life, but does not define the person. So we call the person who has autism a child with autism instead to say autistic child. So because this child has another a child has another part of the life there, funny, singer, or curious, different things, but autism is part of the life, but does not define their life. So hopefully this information, I know I don't supposed to take more than 10 minutes. Hopefully took around 10 minutes, I didn't take the time, but I'm so excited about that. And if you have any questions, please, we'll be so happy for that.
Thank you. Ms. Maldonado, I'll let you know that a lot of people have enjoyed your presentation. There's a few comments in the chat. Vanessa thinks that a lot of agencies need to continue to work together, find ways to be inclusive as possible, hire staff, provide materials and resources to assist people from different ethnicities and backgrounds. Lakeisha agrees with that. Shelby worked the majority with Hispanic families prior to coming to Partners. Always noticed that the male in the family tended to lead, and the wife looked to him to speak first. She's really glad that you talked about that. It makes sense to her now. Mary Beth really liked all of the presentations and found this meeting very informational and wants everyone to work together to be more inclusive.
I know we're out of time, but there was one quick question. It was about the Latinx. It was, can you talk about what that means and if that is accepted by our communities?
Well, the terminology has started to use lately because they cover Latino families in any sex, because normally in the Spanish word, Latino is for men, Latina is for girl, and Latinx now is covered all the gender. So that is the reason Latinx. This is a new terminology that is using now in the new generations, but right now with the time is also is getting from another, for the whole culture. It's on the way.
Thank you.
And I want to mention very fast, Vanessa, who mentioned also, she's our new bilingual autism resource specialist located in Greensboro. So hopefully, that's the reason I invite her to be there. Hopefully she can participate and provide similar presentations in the future.
Good morning. Thank you, Mariela. And I really appreciate you for letting me know about this meeting. I really enjoy it and will do my best to continue being a part of the future meetings. Thank you so much. Great presentation.
Thank you.
So I just want to go ahead and close this out. I want to say thank you to all the participants that participated in today's cafe. I also want to give a special shout out to all of our presenters. Thank you so much for the wealth of information that you shared with us. We are excited about the knowledge that we've gained, and so we can move forward with that. Have your contact information as well. So next month's cafe, we're really going to kick off. September is recovery month. And so we're going to kick off our cafe in August with talking about recovery events and community support systems. We're going to talk a little bit about substance use and recovery from the point of view of the EMS, community agencies, and peer support specialists with lived experience. So we'd love for you all to come back and be a part of next month's Community Cafe. You can register. And again, thank you again for our presenters and everyone that's here. Have a great rest of the afternoon. Thank you.